Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, I'm delighted to take part in this EcoPeace conference and to have learned about the vision of the Green-Blue Deal for the Middle East. This really seems to be an exciting opportunity for the region, not only to resolve the urgent issue of the climate crisis, but also to advance the process of peace. Before dealing with the subject of this conference, I would like to tell you about my personal involvement in the fight against biodiversity loss and the climate breakdown, and why I became an activist. It all started with a family story. My father, King Leopold III, was a pioneer in the field of the environment as early as the 1930s. He traveled extensively in Africa, Latin America and Asia, and in the 60s and 70s spent many months sharing the daily life of the indigenous communities in the Amazon. As a child, I learned from him how we should protect nature, our life support system, and also the rights and culture of indigenous people, who are the best custodians of their lands and forests. My father established a foundation in 1972 for the scientific exploration and conservation of nature, and after he passed away 10 years later, I succeeded him as president. At the same time, as a journalist and author, I became increasingly aware of the climate crisis. Scientists were raising the alarm, but unfortunately, the power of fossil fuel corporation was able to manipulate political leaders and public opinion to doubt even the concept of man-made climate change and the need to act urgently. This was compounded by the fact that mainstream media was not treating the subject adequately, providing an echo for climate deniers. I have to say that in the last 2 years, we owe so much to the young people, strikers for climate, as well as to Extinction Rebellion, the citizen movement, who raised awareness among the general public about the climate emergency. So at the time, I decided to gather interviews of different people for a book about the state of the planet. Environmental scientists, but also health and food specialists, artists, economics, political figures, philosophers, and religious leaders. One of the conversations that impacted me most was the one I had with Mikhail Gorbachev, the former president of the Soviet Union. He said that for him, the most important issue of the climate crisis was water scarcity. He stressed that if we were not able to curb the water crisis, by 2025, 3.4 billion people would have limited access to drinking water, and by 2100, between 1 and 3 billion would suffer water shortages. Gorbachev added, "This sudden scarcity of an element whose symbolic and spiritual importance equals its essential role in the heart of human life will produce a considerable pressure on nations and individuals, exacerbating conflicts around the world." Mikhail Gorbachev's assessment was correct. The World Resources Institute has recently listed the countries that are most likely to run out of water as early as 2040. The Middle East countries are among the ones with 80% risks, Jordan being the third most water-scarce country in the world. For so many of us, water is something undervalued. We only have to open the tap without even thinking. But for millions of people around the world, water is as precious as gold. They know the value of it, especially the women and girls who sometimes have to walk several hours to go and get it. At the same time, satellite images from the NASA are showing that arid areas are getting drier due to climate change and population growth. Megacities have experienced already dramatic shortages. Cape Town in South Africa, New Delhi and Chennai in India, Sao Paulo in Brazil, Istanbul in Turkey. Others are at risk, like Las Vegas in the US or Beijing in China. Each water crisis can lead to civil unrest, food insecurity, and flows of migrants. In 2004, an analysis by the Pentagon concluded that climate change, and in particular shortage of water, was going to be a major national security concern. As it is always the case, the climate crisis, or indeed the pandemic that we are suffering at the moment, affect disproportionately the poorest and marginalized. In the Middle East, this is the daily struggle of the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, or the refugees in the camps in Jordan and Lebanon. This is why we have to emphasize that the climate crisis is above all a human rights and social crisis. It affects our basic rights to food, water, clean air, health and security, and it affects the most vulnerable. One lesson should be learned from the COVID-19 pandemic is that we can only come out of this crisis if we collaborate. As Pope Francis wrote in his latest book, The Path to a Better Future, no one is saved alone. Fraternity is the new frontier. And Jay Famiglietti, the leading expert in global water crisis, said, "Problems are regional. Countries need to work together." The vision of the Green-Blue Deal is therefore a great opportunity. Countries working together, which will bring energy security for all, water equity, and green jobs. We have heard how this is going to generate economic gains to all sides, and in doing so, should be an essential tool for the building of peace in the region. Another very interesting part of the project is the cross-border educational program. It will provide environmental and climate awareness and knowledge to young people who will put pressure on governments. I have recently witnessed how education is a powerful tool in the field of environment. An initiative supported by the UN involved 1 million students and teachers around the world to discuss, virtually across continents, issues and solutions related to climate. The result was an extraordinary range of ideas and responses to the problems through shared knowledge. This is exactly the goal of the EcoPeace national school programs. To conclude, I would like to say that 2020 has been an extremely challenging and painful year. But in relation to the climate crisis, it has seen significant advances to achieve carbon neutrality. The Green Deal from the European Union, the strongest commitment so far, China's pledge to achieve zero emissions by 2060, as well as the new administration in the USA plan to rejoin the Paris Accord. The Green-Blue Deal is an ambitious and inspiring project for one of the most vulnerable regions to the climate crisis. I really hope that European countries will actively support it, both financially and diplomatically, since it has huge potential to address urgent environmental issues, as well as the possibility of reviving the peace process. The climate emergency is real. We have a very small window of opportunity to act, and global cooperation is essential. Let's work all together and create a Middle East Green-Blue Deal coalition to achieve environmental justice, sustainability, security, and peace. Thank you.